questions I get asked almost more than anything else is what app I use to draw on my quilts on my iPad. And so today we're going to talk about my best tips for using Procreate for quilting. So let's jump right in. So this is the Procreate app. It has this little swoosh if you're looking for it in the App Store. And when you open it, I've already populated it with a lot of projects that I've been working with. But to start something new, you just go into this plus area and it will pop up a variety of different sizes for you to choose from. I usually just default to screen size because it's easy. Once we have a new project open, you can use 2 fingers to rotate or pinch in and out, zoom in and out on your artwork. I like to be able to see the edges of my paper, so I usually zoom out a little bit so that I can see that. Now that we have this nice clean canvas to work with, we can import a picture of our quilt. Your iPad has a camera in it. You can just snap a picture and import it directly. Or if you have another picture that you've downloaded off the internet, then you can save that to your iPad and import it to Procreate. To do this, you're going to go to the wrench icon and go to Add. And it's going to say insert a photo right there. So my photo library here is a bit of a mess, so I'm just going to hurry up and find a picture here. This is actually the diagram of a pattern I just designed. A diagram is a great place to start because you know it's all perfect and flat, and you can also download it from the designer's website maybe, or just take a photograph of it from the pattern that you've purchased. And then you can be working on your free motion quilting ideas before you've even finished your top. As soon as you import your picture, you'll be able to resize it. Sometimes they'll be a little small and you can pull them up. You can move it around. If you put your pen down anywhere close to one of these corners, you'll be able to drag it. And I'm going to just make mine pretty much fill the screen here. I like to work as big as I can so that I can zoom in really nicely. Once you're happy with that, you can tap on the pen and it will lock your diagram or picture in place. Now, the first thing I want you to do after importing your picture and setting it where you want it to be is go to your layers area, which is this little square over a square icon here, and add a layer by clicking the plus. And it looks like nothing happens, but it has added a new layer for you to draw on. It's like you're stacking invisible pieces of paper on top of each other. So now when this one is highlighted and we go to the pen icon, we can draw on our picture. But if we decide that we don't like it, then we can just hide that layer or delete it. And we haven't impacted the picture below. So that if you decide something isn't quite right or you want to erase it, when you erase, it only affects the layer that you're on, so that you won't have to re-import the picture or lose any work. You can just deal with the layer that you're on instead of impacting the whole drawing that you've created. So now it's time to finally draw on our quilt. And I just realized while filming this that while I can zoom in and out on my iPad screen, the signal that goes through this that gets recorded for you guys doesn't actually zoom. So it's staying the exact same size. So I am going to, instead of zooming in on my screen, just import a larger picture of this block. Okay, so there we go. Now again, normally I would have just zoomed in on the full diagram that I was looking at, but it's not going to work for recording. So here I have just a set of the 4 blocks that come together to make the larger pattern in this quilt. Now I'm going to be drawing with black because it's high contrast and these are all pretty juicy, bright colors with a white background. But I suggest you use a high contrast color to draw on initially. We will be able to change the color of this marker at a later time. So use something that is easy to see and easy on your eyes. So I'm going to start drawing and I'm going to use a different layer for all of the design elements that I start to draw. And that is because later we're going to be able to mix and match these. Okay, so I've drawn a couple of options for both the color and the background of this block. And what I'm doing here is I'm just starting a new layer and then I'm drawing an option for the background. And maybe this time it's little S-curves that I would maybe want in this white. And I am just loosely sketching. I'm not spending a lot of time making this perfect. This is just idea generation time. So once I have that on a layer, now I can turn it off and it blanks that background part of the block. And I can create a new layer and try something else. Maybe this time it's more of a angular dot to dot. And now I have all these layers, layer 5, 10, 9, 8, and 7, that are all background options. And these layers up here are all options for the colors. And I can just click that little box that makes them visible, and then I can mix and match and see what I like together. I like this little continuous curve for the prints, and now let's see what options I like for the background that go with it. I like that. That's a little too angular. I don't know if I like those together. So I like this combination. I'm going to drag these two layers up to the top, just so they're a little easier to work with. And now I can duplicate it. Swipe right and duplicate it. And it looks like nothing happens. But if we go to this little arrow, it highlights that layer that we're on. And now we can move it around and rotate it. So I'm going to rotate it around and stick it in this block. And then I'm going to do it again. And this is a really quick way to draw in one block and see how it looks as 4 blocks come together. And then I can do that same thing with the feather background. If you wanted to make this even easier, you could combine these two layers by saying merge down, and now both of these feather options are on the same layer. So I can just duplicate that and it will copy them both at the same time. And I can just rotate it around and then drag it to where it matches up. And now I have an idea of how a whole block would come together, a whole set of blocks would come together without having to redraw the same thing over and over. Now remember when I said we could change this thread color? We need to get all of these in the same layer, which is super easy. I'm going to put my middle finger on the top layer and my thumb on the bottom layer, this layer 8, and I'm just going to pinch them together. And now I have all of these things on one layer. I'm going to click on it and select Alpha Lock. And that means that whatever color I apply to this is only going to affect the drawings that I've done on this layer. So let's say I choose a pink thread and I'm going to give myself a really big marker. And now, see how we're coloring just the lines that we drew? And now we can get a sense of how it would look with pink thread. Or let's choose orange thread. That orange really disappears over here, but it really pops on that pink. Let's see, what other color? A lime green. Oh, I like that. I'm always going to choose that lime green color though. But this is a great way to really quickly think about how your thread color will impact the designs that you've made. That Alpha Lock is amazing. So there are 2 final tips that I want to show you to make your drawings even easier and better in Procreate. And the first one is to draw a straight line or a perfect shape. It's awfully hard to draw a straight line with a pen and a paper. So here's an option. If you draw a line and don't pick your pen up, in about a second or so, it will snap to be perfect. And it will say line created. And then you'll have the option to edit the shape. And you can move the endpoints to be exactly where you wanted them to be. And this is great if you have a line that you know you want to land in a certain place and you want it to look really straight. You can just draw your line and just hold it and it will snap perfectly straight. And then you can drag it around to have it be absolutely perfect. Let's say I wanted an option where I was quilting lines like this for some reason. Then I can really quickly make them exactly how I want them to be. And it's not just lines. You can also draw a circle and it will snap to be perfect. You can resize it at that point, or go to edit shape and adjust it, squish it down and make it oval. You can do that with almost anything. There's a square, and it will really improve your drawing because it's really difficult to draw a perfect square. And this will allow you all kinds of flexibility. These perfect shapes will also come in really handy if you want to sketch a quilt idea. Let's say you have an idea for some flying geese. Then you can copy that layer to make another block and start stacking it. And then you can even color your shapes in. As long as it's a closed shape, you can select any color you would like and then just drag that color down and drop it into your shape that you want to color. And then you can play around with these. These are on separate layers, so I can still move them and rotate them to think about how I might want a quilt to come together. The last tip I want to show you is about working with colors. If there's a palette that you really love, and Pinterest is full of those palette inspiration things where there's like a picture and a couple of colors pulled from that picture, you can create a palette in Procreate to use colors from that image. So to import that into Procreate, you go to the palettes menu, which is in your little color menu, palettes, and then push the little plus. And it will say create new palette, new from camera. We want to go to new from photos. And that will again bring up my terrible photo stream here. So I'm just going to grab a picture. Okay, so here's one of my silly dog. And it created this palette of browns and greens and various shades of Emma. You can use that with any picture or with one of those palette inspiration things that you find online. And that gives you a great design palette to start with if you are trying to sketch a quilt. My last color tip is working with colors you've already used. Let's say you wanted to use this pink again, but you weren't sure which pink it was. There's a million pinks in my palette. You can use your finger gestures and you just tap on the screen and this little bubble will come up, and that is the last used color on the bottom and the color that your finger is on the top. And if you just tap on it and hold it for a second, then it will select that pink, and then you'll be able to use that pink again and it will match perfectly. So this is also great if you want to import a picture and choose the colors to pull from that picture. So I'm going to import another picture really quick. So here's this picture of this gorgeous sunrise that happened a couple weeks ago outside of my house. Let's say I wanted to create a palette from this image without it auto-generating. I can go to my palettes menu and just create a new palette, and it's going to give me a blank palette. And you can rename it if you would like, but you can use that finger control to select the colors that you want to be in this palette. You select a color. See, I want this particular orange. I can select that. I really want to capture these almost orangey melon colors. And then I want to be sure to get a lot of this dark purpley blue. And then these really dark colors here at the bottom. And you can build an entire palette selecting the colors that you really want and organizing that way. And that way you can say goodbye to this picture, and now you have this palette to start drawing with. And you can design a quilt around it. Procreate is definitely one of those apps I have used over and over for years now. So if you've ever thought about it or you didn't know how it really would apply to quilting, I hope I helped you out here today. And as I said, I'm sure that there are other apps that have some of these same functionalities that you can use if you don't have an iPad or don't want to invest in Procreate. But I hope I helped you guys out today, and I will be back soon with another quilty video. So until then, happy quilting!